What's up, guys? Cliff here from Not Gospel Studios. Today I'm in location in our artist trailer slash ice fishing unit. That's pretty neat. There's a bunch of manhole covers on the ground where they use this to ice fish. And we are here at the Rural Music Festival just outside of Minneapolis, Minnesota. We're playing this festival with 7 Day Slumber, Mac Powell, Disciple. We actually play a little bit later tonight, but I wanted to do a reaction for you guys on a clip from Don Lemon of CNN. Now, this clip is about 6 years old. And the reason why we're reacting to this right now is because other CNN employees have recently been let go. I believe the reason they are being let go is because of activism masquerading as actual journalism. Now, I've said for a while that Don Lemon and Rachel Maddow and people from even Fox and CNN and NBC, oftentimes on these major news networks, you have activists who are masquerading around as actual journalists and are framing their questions and doing their interviews all in favor of their ideological political agenda. So we're going to dive into this thing, we're going to take a look at it, and we're going to react to it.
3 officers dead, 3 wounded in Baton Rouge. A really tough day for Baton Rouge and for the country, really. Here to talk about how to keep our police safe is Sheriff David Clarke of Milwaukee County, Wisconsin. He is going to be speaking at the Republican convention tomorrow night. Sheriff, thank you very much for that horrific day. I spoke to the heads of the Sheriff Department, the Police Department, and the state police down there, and they told us how their hearts were reeling. Their message is peace and coming together in the country. What's your message?
You don't believe that for 1 minute, do you?
That their message is?
Yeah.
That's what they said to me.
Okay.
Already this sheriff comes off as pretty aggravated or agitated, and I think he has every right to be, because you're talking about dead cops, and that's not something that police officers and law enforcement take lightly.
Yeah, I believe them.
Any protests over the deaths of these cops today in Baton Rouge?
I don't know that. I don't know that.
Any riots or protests over the police officers in Dallas, Texas?
What are you asking?
It's a pretty simple question.
I asked you what's your message to the people. Their message is one of peace. What is your message?
My message has been clear from day one 2 years ago. This anti-cop sentiment from this hateful ideology called Black Lives Matter has fueled this rage against the American police officer. I predicted this 2 years ago.
I 100% agree with the sheriff here. So he's essentially asking this question of Don Lemon. He's saying, were there any riots or protests over the death of these police officers? Now, keep in mind, one of the police officers that was killed in Baton Rouge was an African American, was a black man. And he's saying, are there any riots, are there any protests? With a name like Black Lives Matter, you'd think there'd be some riots and some protests over a black dead police officer, but there's nothing. No riots, no protests. The actual truth here is that Black Lives Matter, and we've said it for a while, is a campaign marketing slogan. It is not actually what the organization is about. They're not really about the preservation of black lives. It's an organization that's about stopping police brutality. Their name should actually be the Anti-Police Brutality Coalition. But A, that doesn't slide off the tongue as easy as Black Lives Matter or BLM, because they'd be the APBC. And also, that's not as contentious a label. If they called themselves the Anti-Police Brutality Coalition, everybody on the left and the right, conservative or liberal, would be in agreement. They'd say, we 100% are down with what you're about. We don't want police brutalizing citizens. We don't want them overexerting their power. We want them doing their job fairly. We're on board. With a name like that, they wouldn't be as divisive. But with a name like Black Lives Matter, they immediately are more divisive. When people on the conservative side see a lack of demonstration for a dead cop from Black Lives Matter, they can say, well, obviously black lives don't matter to you. Or they can say, what do you mean? None of the other lives matter, but only Black Lives Matter? A name like that creates division, creates contention, and that's precisely why they went with that slogan.
Do you know that this was because of that?
Yes, I do.
As a law enforcement officer?
I've been watching this for 2 years. I predicted this. This anti-police rhetoric sweeping the country has turned out some hateful things inside of people that are now playing themselves out on the American police officer. I want to know, with all of the black-on-black violence in the United States of America, when the tragedies happen in Louisiana and Minnesota, You know that 21 black people were murdered across the United States? Was there any reporting on that?
There was a black officer who was killed today. But
was there any reporting on that?
Sheriff, please.
He's not wrong here at all. It's true. These are the questions with a name like Black Lives Matter. These are the questions that people raise up when you don't make a stink about the death of black cops or the deaths of black individuals who were the victims of black on black crime. People begin to rightly and justifiably make the statement, hey, black lives clearly don't matter to you.
Let's just keep the volume down here. So I understand, and listen.
I'm looking at 3 dead cops this week,
Sheriff,
and I'm looking at 5 last year. And you're trying to tell me to keep it down?
If you'll just please, we can keep it civil. So, because the message to people at home, I'm sure you want, is one of civility.
I wish, Don, I wish you had that message of civility.
I would like to have a conversation
toward this
with you.
Hateful ideology, these purveyors of hate.
You don't know what my message is.
That's
what I
what
want
they
to say
do.
to you is,
these people preach vile and virtue
we'll be right
in the
back.
name
We're
of
going to go to break,
hate.
and we'll be right back.
This is a classic tactic that Don Lemon does here. He can't argue with this sheriff's opinion, so he just says, we'll go right to break. And I assume during the break they're going to have somebody come over and try to talk to him and be like, you need to keep it down, we need to keep this civil, stop talking over one another. And it gives Don Lemon an opportunity to maybe formulate some argument.
What it sounds like to me is that you're accusing me of violence and supporting a narrative that I'm not necessarily in support of. And if that's what you're accusing me of violence, then you can leave. That's not true. I don't support violence of any type against police officers, against anyone. So if you're accusing me of that, then you're welcome to leave. But if you want to have a conversation, I am more than willing to welcome a conversation with you.
Super funny to me that Don Lemon says you're accusing me of violence, and if you're accusing me of violence, you're welcome to leave. The sheriff never once accused him of violence. He just said that the BLM protests and riots were violent, and nobody said anything about it.
Go ahead.
Let me ask you this. Do we know that generally the American law enforcement officers are racist? Do we know this?
Go on.
I ask a question.
Do I know?
He asked him a question and told him to go on. He says, let me ask you this. Do we know that they're racist? And Don Lemon just looks at him, like stares at him. Again, it's so funny.
I don't think anyone is accusing. If you're insinuating that people are accusing or saying that law enforcement across this country as a whole are racist, then your assumption is wrong.
First of all, this whole anti-police rhetoric is based on a lie. There is no data, and you know this. There is no data. There is no research that proves any of that nonsense. None.
You'd have to be more specific about what data and what nonsense you're talking about.
At this moment, I will say I do agree with Don Lemon. If he's going to make a statement, he does need to have specifics about what data, what research, and what assumptions that they're talking about here. So I do agree with Don Lemon on that.
That law enforcement officers treat black males different than white males in policing in these urban centers.
There is data that supports
There is not data.
No, the president spoke about it. Cedric Alexander, who is a law
president has
enforcement
been
officer,
lying about it. He said it again the other day when he said black males are 2 times more likely to be shot by a law enforcement officer than white males. Don, that is a lie.
Don Lemon has the audacity to argue with a sheriff and law enforcement about law enforcement statistics.
Show it to me then.
That we have from the Washington Post. That
the Washington Post
study.
debunked that nonsense.
There's also research.
He also said
Sheriff,
this, Don.
There's also research.
He
from
continues.
A Harvard professor that also showed that black people are treated more aggressively by police officers.
No, you are wrong
people.
in your interpretation of that Harvard study, because I read the study.
He didn't realize that the sheriff had read the study.
That's not what he said. He said he was surprised to find
that in shootings of the most severe in shootings, that he found no evidence that there was a difference. Also, it should be noted that that study was a very small sampling of police departments across the country. Many people did not find it credible.
Sorry. So Don Lemon brings up a study to prove his point from Harvard, I think it was, that black men are treated more violently than white men by cops. He then goes on to say, it should be noted that the study that I just brought up was a small study from a very small sample. So he brings up a study to prove his point, realizes that the sheriff knows the study and is debunking his statement, and so then he tries to devalue the study and say that and discredit the study and say that it should be noted that this is not a credible study. Like, what planet are you from, bro? Don't bring up a study to prove your point and then say, oh, by the way, it's not credible.
But it is also interesting that in that research, he found that blacks were treated differently when it came to aggressive policing, but for the most egregious shootings, he found no difference. That's what that study showed.
Well,
not only does he discredit his own study that he brought up, but now he's trying to use that study after discrediting it and saying, but also that study found out that black people were treated more aggressively. It's like, either the study's credible or not. Like, come on. This is not journalism. This is activism. This is trying to warp truth to make it say what you want it to say.
Are we talking about high crime areas?
Talking
Are we talking about police officers being under attack? Because let's go back to where this whole thing started in Ferguson, Missouri. The lie was hands up, don't shoot.
Lumping a whole bunch of things into one. If we can do one specific
That's
thing
where this whole phony movement started. It started out as hands up, don't shoot.
You're talking about Black Lives Matter.
Right.
Okay.
Two persons of color who have drastically differing opinions about these topics.
So if you want to you would need to speak to someone who is a member of Black Lives Matter about whether they have perpetrated a fraud on the American people. That's not me. I'm neither a member of Black Lives Matter, I'm neither a supporter or someone who doesn't support them. I simply report.
I either support them or I don't. He's trying to be very vague about what he does and does not support.
Do you condemn the anti-police rhetoric coming from this hateful ideology?
As a journalist sitting here on television, I don't have to condemn anyone, anything. That is something that you should ask other people around the country.
I condemn
their jobs to condemn
just
that.
like I condemn the hateful ideology out of groups like the KKK. There is no place in American discourse for that sort of vile, vitriolic hate coming out of this ideology.
So one thing that Don Lemon did say is absolutely true. His job as a journalist is not to condemn anything. But again, it's hypocrisy. He's not a journalist. He's an activist. Because how many times have we seen Don Lemon over the years condemning the theory that the election was stolen in 2020? There's a quote where Don Lemon himself says, "We just need to blow up the whole system, man, and just get rid of the Electoral College and everything." So even though he admits it's not his job as a journalist to condemn anything, he does it all the time when it fits his narrative. This clip was done in 2016, which was the election year. And that's the year that Trump won. And what we have seen over the course of however many years is that black lives really only matter every 4 years. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that that's what you see in politics. And mark my words, in 2024, there will be more demonstrations. There'll be more riots. There'll be more protests and people getting up in arms for Black Lives Matter and about racial issues than there are now in 2022. Why? Because to particularly the left and liberals and Democrat pundits, Black lives only matter every 4 years. It's no secret that him and Rachel Maddow and some of the other it can be argued that some of the other anchors on other news channels like Fox News and NBC and all this, it's no secret that they're activists in journalist clothing. But anyways, guys, let me know what you think about this clip. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. You guys are crushing the subscriptions for us. We've grown a lot and we're grateful for it. Continue to support quality independent content. And as always, keep being awesome because that's how God made you.